The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
All guns up. Giddy up. Welcome to Night Shift. It's Night Shift, baby. A little true crime action. Tonight you've got myself and the always beautiful Andrea up late. What's up, Andrea?
What's going on?
Oh man, I'm excited about tonight. You left us hanging. You left us a hanger with the Murdaugh murders part 1, and now you're back to go part 2. I am so excited. I have been waiting all week. You know what? I knew the first part of the story, but I do not know this second part of the story. At least the pictures you sent me do not look familiar to me. Are you still there? Are you lagging behind? She might be having a little bit of internet issues.
No. So I'm hearing you in double.
I got you. You got to hit mute on your computer on your old YouTubes there. Or maybe that's me. Nope, that was me. That was me that didn't hit the mute on my YouTubes. Still there now? Well, she's going to fix that. While we're waiting for that, we got a banger of a show tomorrow. If you're not part of our paid membership program, you will get to go behind the scenes tomorrow with Colin O'Brady, the first man to solo cross Antarctica. Also, he's got 10 world records. He's also one of 50 dudes to crest all 7 peaks and all 7 apexes, all 7 continents, something like that. Anyway, it's going to be a great show. Andrea, do we have you back? Are you there now, Andrea? Did you unmute your mic? Have you unmuted your mic?
I did. Can you hear me?
Now we got you.
All right, we're on. Jeez, y'all. It's always something at the beginning.
Always something at the beginning. So give us a quick recap of last week before we dive into the Murdaugh murders part 2.
There's many parts, right? So last week we talked about Paul. So if you remember, the family is dad is Alex, mom is Maggie, and then they have the sons. The oldest son is Buster, and then Paul. Last week we primarily talked about Paul, who in June of 2019 wrecked a boat with 5 of his dearest friends and went straight into a pylon. It caused a lot of devastation, which resulted in the death of Mallory Beach. So we then at that time talked about the family, the 3 generations of lawyers. If you remember, they were actually solicitors as well, which means they can be like a DA, prosecutor, but also hold private practice. So they essentially had an entire grip on this teeny tiny county in South Carolina. Everyone knew their name, and we went on to disclose potential cover-ups that we found out later have absolutely been true. Excuse me. So that was kind of the brunt of it. If you remember, Paul was kind of a tough kid, very entitled, little brat, really, who had a drinking problem from very early teenage years, and was completely and utterly enabled by his family, and never a slap. Paul never served any time, didn't see one bit of jail time for the murder of Mallory. So that's kind of where we left off last week.
So a couple of rich kids go out on a boat, get in a drunk-related boating accident. A girl goes missing. They find her. She's dead. And rich lawyer kid doesn't go to jail, doesn't do any time, doesn't do anything. And that's where we left off last week. So I'm excited to dive back into this week. Again, you are listening to Night Shift. It is a live show. It's a live show. So we have always got to acknowledge the YouTube chats and all the people that are here. Sarah, Craig, Crockett, Cassidy, Sean Husk, all the folks are here. We're so excited. Today's show is brought to you by GhostBed, ghostbed.com. And the promo code is going to be Wolfpack. That's right. Our own promo code after, I don't know what, after a whole year of podcasting, we now have our own promo code, which is Wolfpack. Super, super excited about that. I'm excited to dive into tonight's episode. And yeah, it's been a good week. How was your week, Ben? Real quick.
My week's been good. Been a little busy. My mom's been in town. It's been great. So she's had some great time with the kids. We've been doing a lot of fun stuff. Meant to get you some quality time pictures. I've got some I'll give you for your Thursday night for your last call.
Yep. I'm excited about all the last call stuff. It's going really good. The show is taking a whole new direction, which is exciting. And we're getting to spend like quality time off with really quality guests that really know how to take a day off, like Colin O'Brady. He was just on Joe Rogan not too long ago.
It's going to be an amazing show.
I'm super pumped to have him. Like I said, if you're part of our paid membership YouTube subscribe, you can watch that tomorrow at noon. If you're not part of that group, you'll just have to wait until Thursday. You have to wait until Thursday and you won't be in the live chat, but that's okay. You can still enjoy the show. If you would, go to iTunes, go to Spotify, go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, whatever platform you're on, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button for us. We are 4 shows a week now. We are Monday Off the Cuff, which is all your police related news. Tuesday Night Shift, which is true crime with Andrea up late. Thursday is Last Call, and Friday is our case breakdowns with Mike the Cop and Eric Tanzi. So lots of shows going on, lots of content. That's all free to you, unless you want to be a paid member of our YouTube, which gets you backstage and also gets you into our Discord and also gives you like special, like pre-merch releases and pre-merch discounts, things like that. We've got a whole nother thing that we're ramping up, a whole new special thing that we're putting together for the holidays for our paid premium members. But now that all that house cleaning crap is out of the way, Andrea, I'm going to let you take the helm. Murdaugh Murders Part Deuce.
Yeah. And actually, super quick, one more little house cleaning before I forget. If you guys saw my story a few days ago, I had a little quiz with a couple of questions from last week, just silly stuff from last week's show. And I said the first one to respond to me in a message with all 3 answers that were correct would win. So we have a winner. We had a lot of wonderful winners. Lastro Lopez was definitely one of the contenders for the best wrong answers if you saw the follow-up story. But Alex Moore, he wrote in. He is the listener that got everything right and was the first to respond. So good job, Alex. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening. And we have gone back and forth on what to send you because when I said I would send something, I didn't know what that was going to be. Eric had a lot of really good ideas, and I'm not following through with any of them. So what he finally thought would be a great idea, since we make fun of my paper notes, is to laminate the notes from that show and send them to you. So if you want them or not, that's what's coming your way, Alex. So just if you want to send me a message with your address, I'll get those in the mail.
Oh, so you took the notes from the show and you like laminated it?
Yeah.
Oh, that is cool. That was my idea?
It was one of your ideas. The only one I'm going with.
That's pretty cool. Thank you. Glad you went with it.
Thank you.
One of my ideas. I'll let you imagine what my other ideas were, folks.
Yep. That's the only thing I'm sending, guys. So all right. So let's move forward. So I want to hold a lot of this close and only give you what you need as time allows and save a lot of things for next week and whatever. We're really going to try to wrap this up, guys, next week. I'm afraid, you guys, I don't want you to get bored with a 4-part. It cannot be less than a 3-part story, though. It's not even a question. The detail-oriented ICU nurse / digger, diver, deep thinker of me wants to dig into every detail of this. And if I did, there's a reason there's entire podcasts just on the Murdaugh murder saga, like 30, 40 episodes that don't even cover all of it. So we're really trying to kind of skim the surface and do a meat and potatoes synopsis here. But I have to let a little bit extra loose in order to give you some perspective. So we talked about Paul last week, who in June of 2019 wrecked the boat. Mallory Beach was killed. That was the first that we had known of this family and really of their shady practices, big time hold on the county and all their cover-ups. So there's a lot more to it than just all Murdaugh. So we actually are going to start today with Stephan Smith. Stephan Smith is a 19-year-old boy that was killed. You can help us decide, or anyone else, if it was by hit and run or if this was intentional foul play. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And it's super interesting and it gets wild at every turn. But I want you to know that that was 2015 if you want to keep a little timeline in your head. So Stephan Smith, the hit and run kid tonight, 2015. Next week, we're going to talk about in 2018, Gloria Satterfield was the housekeeper of the Murdaughs. She wound up falling down a set of stairs outside and died just 3 years after this car accident, right? Then we have let's see here, or excuse me, it was February of 2019 was the boat, okay? So Gloria, the housekeeper, was 2018. 2019, we have the boat accident that we talked about last week. And then we have Paul, the driver of the boat, and Maggie, the mother in the Murdaugh family, were found murdered in their home or in their hunting property land in June of 2021. So next week, we're going to talk about Gloria, the housekeeper, and the big explosion of a case that happened in 2021 with mom and son found shot on their property. Alex, I'll go on. It's all over the news. Alex, the father, has now been indicted in those murders of his son and his wife. So I'm just trying to tie all that together as we go back, because what had happened was Stephan Smith, that we're going to talk about tonight, that was potentially a hit and run victim. That case that happened in 2015, it went cold in 2016. It was deemed a hit and run. We're going to find out there were a lot of leads, a lot of interesting conversations and interviews that happened, and it was let go. And in 2016, it got pushed aside as a hit and run and was never looked at again, never considered again, until 2021, just last year, when Maggie and Paul were found murdered at their hunting property, and Dad Alex has been indicted. And all that SLED, you're going to hear me say SLED, that's the State Law Enforcement Division. All that SLED will say is that we are reopening the Stephan Smith case because we have found reason to do so. So in terms of Maggie and Paul being murdered, they have now found enough, they don't say evidence, but information that they feel it important to reopen this case from 7 years ago.
Wow. So this is like more deaths than the Clintons.
Almost.
Yeah,
we're getting close in numbers.
We're getting close to Clinton numbers here. Like, anybody that's attached to this family seems to wind up dead.
It's bizarre. It's like even today, and we'll talk about it, but I was kind of doing a little dive in on the medical examiner, the pathologist that we'll talk about. Her name is Erin Presnell. And because she's kind of an interesting character in this story as well. Notice I always call them characters. That's just because in my head, it is like a story. It's bizarre. But so I just started reading some things about her to solidify some facts for tonight. And in doing so, started reading about like 4 other cases that potentially are still tied to this, it goes on and on. So anyway, I digress. We'll get going. So on the early morning hours of July 8th of 2015, at 3:48 a.m., Stephan was found in the middle of the road, Sandy Run Road in Hampton County, South Carolina. It looked like he had been hit by a car, and we actually do you have the audio, Eric? Eric's our producer again tonight, guys.
I do. If you want to just keep going, and
I will. That's fine. When you have time, we have the 911 call. So a gentleman had been driving down the road, and wound up calling 911 because he saw a body laying there. That's all he knew. He didn't really get close, didn't see if he was alive or not. He was concerned. He just saw that a man was laying there. He was concerned that this man would then ultimately get hit by a car, and then we'll see what follows. Stephan is 19 years old. He was known to be a ray of sunshine. His mother says that he was always just a very happy soul, very charismatic. He only ever wanted to be in the medical field of some sort, and so at this time, he was taking his prerequisite courses for nursing school at a local college.
Okay. So you want to start this thing off with the 911 call?
I think that's a good start.
All right. We'll see if this works here. Well, nope. Keep going. I got to get it through an ad first.
Yeah, no worries. So to set the scene, you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hampton County 911. Where's your emergency?
Hello, I was going down Proctorville Road, and I see somebody laying out.
What road are you? What's the name of the highway that you're on?
I know it's Proctorville Road.
Just know it's Proctorville Road.
Yeah.
Hold on just a second. And which way are you headed?
Okay, you know the back way to go, like going to Horse Brunson?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on that road just before you get into Crocketville.
Turn Crockerville, make that right.
Okay. Come to Crocketville, take a right.
Wait, take a left. When you go 601, Bamberg.
Uh-huh. If I'm going toward Bamberg, I'm gonna take a left on that road.
Yeah, like you're going to I see a road called 14. You can go to Sandy Run,
but you're not on Sandy Run Road.
I think it is. This is you. The Sandy Road goes straight on out.
Okay. All right. And is it in the road or on the side of the road?
It's in the road.
Oh, in the road?
Yeah.
All right. So what's your name and call that number?
My name is Ronnie Capers.
Okay. All right, Mr. Capers. Can I get a phone number for you?
Let's see. I don't know the number off this phone, but you can call this number back. I'm going to work.
Okay, but this is a good number to reach you back at?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll get an officer headed out that way to see what's going on.
Okay, but if you live in the road, I ain't moving or nothing like that. But somebody going to hit him in the dark. Somebody going to hit him.
All right. We'll get an officer headed out that way.
Okay.
All right, sir.
All right.
Yeah. So that was the call we get. It doesn't really describe a lot, but that's when he was first found in the road. So let's talk about the scene a little bit. Elwal, you made a good point a minute ago about being on, and we're going to talk about that for sure. So to the right side of his head, Stephen had a 1/4-inch gash, like a gaping wound. His skull was fractured. His forehead was bruised on both sides. This was more than what anyone has termed like a laceration or a cut. They say gash, they say hole. We will learn that later it's described as an entry point, which doesn't sound like something that would be done by a bumper or a mirror of a car. He had a little bit of what could be defensive abrasions or road rash on the arms, not much. And he did have what was absolutely described as defensive wounds on his hands. His right shoulder was partially dislocated. And outside of that, nothing. Nothing. No bruising on his legs.
You said partially dislocated?
Partially dislocated right shoulder. So we'll keep talking, and we're going to go back to why a lot of that is important, right? His car was found 3 miles away. I think we have a picture of the car somewhere. I had a crime scene or a picture of the car on location. Yes, Scott Rogers. Saw that. Wolfpack Assemble. So his car was found 3 miles away from where Stephen's body was found. The gas cap was unscrewed. You can see it if you're just listening. We've got a picture up. It's a small yellow car. The gas cap is unscrewed and hanging. When police did eventually get to the scene, did locate his car, they noted that the battery would turn over, but the car would not start, indicating that it was likely out of gas. It eventually had to be towed. But keep in mind, he's walked at this point 3 miles. Or so we are to believe from his car.
So there's, I guess what the timeline of events would show is that he runs out of gas. He unscrews the gas cap. I don't know why, because if you're out of gas, are you going to unscrew the gas cap and like look down in there to verify that you're out of gas? Did he have a gas can in his hand and he just takes off walking? Like why did he take the gas cap off?
Yeah. He didn't even take his wallet with him. So when he was found, he had his car keys and his phone in his pocket, or a key and a phone in his pocket. His wallet was in the car.
Nefarious. Did he have any cash or card on him?
They don't go into any detail. There's going to be a lot of detail, unfortunately, that we don't have, because what we're going to learn, and I'm going to get your take on this too. This may be one where we may agree on some weird stuff. So if we talk about last week really quickly on the boat, where a lot of the journalists and podcasters about the boat would speak on the police being inept or negligent, or even so far as to say that they were obstructing justice. I didn't agree with any of that. I did feel like they felt bound by the Murdaugh name in that town. But I don't think that they were necessarily negligible or malicious in intent. In this case, I still don't feel like they're malicious in intent, but good grief, we're missing a lot. We're missing a lot of documentation on phone calls and interviews and things that lack of follow-up on very interesting leads. So we'll talk about all that, but I don't know what was in his wallet, and that was never said. So the car was 3 miles away from where his body was found. He did have his key in his pocket. So his shoes were, and this we talked on a moment ago, but his shoes were loosely tied. They were still on his feet.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked, I don't know how many pedestrian car accidents, car versus pedestrians I've worked. It's got to be in the 20s, every single one of them, shoes have come off. Every single one of them.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say when it's not
even motorcycle accidents, they always lose their shoes unless they're wearing boots.
Yep. And that's what when I was reading into it, that's exactly what everyone has said. You will not have, you were hit by a car or any moving vehicle, you will not have your shoes on. So, and a car doesn't magically loosen your laces either, right? So they're either tied properly and tightly or they're not. A car wouldn't loosen them. It would knock them off your feet. And that's another thing to think about, guys. Let's say that the scene is what it appears to be, right? Or what it's made to look to be. Let's say that he has walked 3 miles in the middle of the night in this town in the middle of nowhere from his car. He's already walked 3 miles. He's going to have a good ways to go after that. Would you not tie your shoes a little more properly? Like, are you going to let your loosely tied shoes just flop? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But, even if that's the train of thought, that's fine. They wouldn't be on his feet had he been rolled over by a car.
What was the time of day on this?
He was found at 3:48 3:48 a.m.
Right, so it just could have happened like super late at night. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Did we know of any toxicology report or anything like that? Was he
was
drunk
completely sober.
Completely sober. Gotcha.
Yeah, nothing found in his system at all. So yeah, another thing to note is that there were no parts or pieces of a vehicle anywhere to be found. No plastic, glass from a side view mirror, obvious paint chips, like absolutely nothing in the evidence in the grid around the body whatsoever. And that's important to note because you're going to generally find something, even if it's minuscule, there will be a piece or part of the vehicle left behind.
Oh yeah. I mean, more often than not, there's going to be shards of glass. If you got clipped by a mirror, the mirror's going to shatter.
Right.
If you got clipped by the side of the vehicle, it's going to knock out the blinkers. I mean, when you hit a human, like it causes a substantial amount of damage, especially if he goes up in the windshield, he's going to have shards of glass or pieces of glass inside of him as well.
So, and let's talk about that, or just continue to remember that he did have a big wound, but it was one big wound on his forehead. It wasn't, again, bruised knees, elbows. If he got tumbled, he rolled, be it on top of a car or on the pavement. Also, if his main wound is on his head, what would that, if we're saying that it was in fact a vehicle that hit him, would it then be a truck, something that head high would hit him? Otherwise, you don't get hit in the head from a vehicle, from a hit and run, right? It's going to be your torso, your hips.
Yeah. So I dropped a young man. I think I told this story on one of our earlier episodes. I did drop a young man off who was heavily intoxicated. You know the story. And I dropped him off and he decided he was going to try to walk home after I dropped him off at a well-lit public gas pump. city gas pump. And he went missing, and I was the last person to see him. He was in my vehicle, my police vehicle. And of course they were able to go and look at the video that I dropped him off at the city gas pump. But the young man walked away from there after I left, and he walked, I don't know, maybe 3 miles, 4 miles, tried to get on the on-ramp of 440. And he was, well, they can only assume is that he was hit by maybe a semi truck, but they found a series of orange and red reflector glass, which would be maybe that he brushed up against the side of a truck. But anyway, it had sent him over the guard railing, and they didn't find him until he was pretty much melted from the heat. And they found him days later after they were, a road crew was just picking up trash, and they found his body, but he was missing for I don't know, upwards of a week. But because of the orange and red reflectors on the road, now they couldn't do a very good autopsy on that because he had melted from the heat. But the one thing was apparent was that like his shoulder blade and his torso were completely, like, all the muscle had been like ripped apart, as in, like you said, the truck clipped him in the back shoulders, but his head had melted into the concrete to a point where they couldn't really figure out, the skull. It was gross. He was like soup when they put him in the body bag. It was really disgusting. But they could tell that his shoulder and rib cages had all been separated forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The small things that happen, right? Like when I was a kid, when I was like 19, I was T-boned by a big truck in the small car I was driving, and they hit me straight on my driver's side door, right? I was fine. Didn't quite realize how badly my car had been totaled until after the fact. But once I got out, I was wearing glasses at the time. They were in the passenger floorboard. I never knew my glasses came off my body. Some of my teeth for the rest of the day if I tried to chew gum, like all the little things that happen, even in just something like that. So yes, if your body gets hit by a moving vehicle, we're gonna see some evidence of that, and we're gonna see particles from the vehicle on the body, particles from the body on a vehicle, things in the road. It would be a lot more than what we're seeing. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the scene. So let's talk about a little bit of jurisdiction and getting started with actually the case moving forward. So at about 6:25 in the morning, we have, well, first of all, the sheriff's deputies, the local Hampton County sheriff's deputies show up, right? Pretty much immediately. About 6:25 in the morning, the first coroner gets there. His name is Ernie Washington. Now, you need to know that the sheriff, immediately upon seeing him, considered it a homicide. In their heads, they already thought homicide, not hit and run. The first coroner gets there, Ernie Washington says, "Oh no, this is absolutely a homicide. This is not a hit and run." He actually described the head wound as an entry point from a projectile. He, in fact, he immediately thought gun. He specifically said so. Then his deputy coroner, Kelly Green, gets there, and she, same thing, gunshot wound. This is a homicide. Now, at this point, local sheriff's department knows they need to call in someone else. So the South Carolina Highway Patrol comes in. Okay. Now, the Highway Patrol is not that they're not criminal investigators in terms of homicide. That's not what they do. They investigate accidents, but they get there because the sheriff's department knew that they needed something bigger. Highway Patrol gets there, not their forte, but even they immediately are like, gunshot wound. It's a homicide.
Now I've also called something a gunshot wound because I had an entry and an exit point, and then we made the whole scene, the crime scene of shooting, trying to find the gun. Went to the hospital. The dude was like, when they put him on the gurney, part of his brain fell out the back of his head. And they did all the MRIs, the whole thing, and they couldn't find where the bullet had traced through the brain at all. The brain was completely intact, aside from there just being a gaping hole in the back and a gaping hole in the front, but nothing had gone through the brain. So then they thought maybe it traveled around the head. So they did all the things, and to show me, like, hey, look, nothing went through this guy's brain and nothing went around its head. So we actually don't think that this dude got shot by something. Come to find out, as we do more of the investigation, this guy was wearing a Marine Corps ring, like one of those like graduation rings. And when he punched the guy in the head, that caused the hole in the front of the head. And when the guy, I guess from the impact of that, rolled to his back, and old Marine dude hammer fisted him in the back of the head, which created the hole in the back of his head and gave us the illusion that he'd been shot in the head. So, but if you would have looked at the initial reports, it was an apparent gunshot wound. But then we had to go back and rewrite that as, it actually wasn't a gunshot wound. This was a dude's like badass ring that he.
Holy cow. So he punched holes in his skull.
In the front and in the back.
So he had like extra crayons for lunch that day.
It was actually a really cool story. It was a kind of a bad story. The guy was the victim. I guess he's a suspect victim, but the suspect in this case had been jacked up on the boat. I guess it's like a PCP marijuana concoction there, and was strung out of his mind, was walking down the street. There was a barbecue. There was a 14-year-old girl, this guy being 19, goes up, starts harassing the girl. Everybody at the barbecue is like, yo, you need to what's wrong with you? You need to go away. And homeboy pulls out a switchblade, in which point the Marine, who was like 60, was washing dishes, watching out the window, walks out of his house, walks up behind the gentleman, and turns him around and, beats the brakes off him, beats the brains right out of his head.
Dang.
Pretty cool story. So, but that dude left because he was like, I'm not going to jail for this. So, and then nobody wanted to talk. So that's why we thought it was a shooting. And then.
Gotcha. Well, so call it what you will. May or may not be a shooting. They did not there's nothing to be said about an exit wound either. I know there doesn't have to be. But yes, ghost bed. Someone's saying that bro would be more chill if he had a ghost bed. Agreed. Code Wolfpack. No one speaks of an exit wound whatsoever, right? But no one's saying we think this is a car. So the local sheriff's department, both corners, and then the highway patrol, no one feels innately in their gut immediately upon seeing this boy that it was a hit and run. Okay. And that's super important. So now I have Sergeant Moore, who was with the highway patrol. He asked both coroners again, Kelly Green and Ernie Washington, their opinion, and they vehemently both said homicide without a shadow of a doubt. So we now it's 8:25 in the morning. It's about 2 hours later. And now we've alerted SLED. If you remember, that's the state law enforcement division. So around 8:25 that morning, SLED shows up on scene. They're kind of the big boys. And they're like, okay, this is actually what we do. This is our bread and butter. We investigate homicide. So let us take over. Something to note, I really do. I've read a lot from what the coroners have said in this case, Ernie and Kelly, and I have read some of their past cases, and I do feel like they are reputable. However, I can't go without mentioning that they did move the body before SLED got there. And I personally don't know why, if they feel in their gut, for whatever reason, I don't know why they would move it, but I definitely don't know why they would move him if they definitely feel like it's a homicide. Is there any reason, Eric, that you can think of that would be something that would be okay to do? Like, I just don't know.
No. Say it one more time. I wasn't listening to. I was watching the chats.
I know. We've talked about this.
I know. Keep going.
Our communication's terrible, Eric. We got to work on that.
It's hard to be a producer and listen at the same time.
No, it's all good. So, no, that the coroners move the body. I was saying that I believe that they're reputable. I've looked at some other things that they've done, but they actually moved Stephen's body before SLED, before the big law enforcement division ever got there. He was dead, like dead. It wasn't like life-saving maneuvers.
No, I mean, if he's dead, they're going to move the body after they've taken all the pictures anyway. You got to open
before the investigators get there.
Well, who's to say that they didn't decide to turn that over to an investigator after their investigators, or is it their investigators that deemed that SLED needed to get involved? And at what point did they decide that SLED get involved? Before the body was moved, or after?
No, before, because they called in SLED, and before SLED could get there, the coroners had moved the body.
Well, I guess if SLED, who knows where they're coming from, how far out? I mean, these are state troopers. There's a lot of things that go on this. Nobody's like nefariously thinking ahead of like, well, let's cover this up right now. I would probably, that's that could happen. That could happen, but it's more probable than not that they were like, is sled coming? I don't know. We're trying to wake the guy up. Where's he coming from? Well, we're not sure. They are working another accident somewhere else. What yada yada yada. And they said, well, like take pictures of everything, and then let's get the body off the road, and let's go ahead and draw out the diagram because we need to open up this traffic. I mean, we can't just leave a dead body out in the road in the festering heat. Or what time was this? What time of year was this?
July.
Yes. You're not, this guy's going to cook on the concrete on the pavement. I don't know how busy this road is at 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean,
that's a fair point.
You're thinking that it could be a homicide, but it's most likely not going to be a homicide because, again, this is way before the Murdaugh murders even happened. This is 2015, and I'm sure the crime rate in this county is very, very, very low. So they're not like thinking that this is going to blow up to be some kind of crazy.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt. No, I agree. The Murdaughs at this point, their name, people knew of them just as well as they did in 2021 or 2019 with these other incidences. But yes, they've not been known as, in fact, if anything, they're kind of revered. People really like them.
Right. They're not like nefarious characters.
Not yet. And so you're right. They had no way of knowing what this was going to turn into for the next 7 years. However, they forget Murdaughs. They weren't even thinking Murdaugh in this moment. But they did immediately think homicide, just based on this body, based on the way Stephen's, the way he was laid out, the way they pretty immediately, in fact, thought that the body had been staged. It didn't take long to come to that conclusion as well. So
finding a body in the middle of the road is was very telling, right? So a lot of evidence here that doesn't really add up. You got a hole in the front of the head. You got an exit wound. What'd you said in the back of the head, right?
No, they've never pointed to an exit wound.
Okay, so just an entry wound.
Yes.
They call it an entry wound. Okay, so you got a big gash in the head, which consistent with going off of a windshield. But do we have glass in the forehead? No. I guess is what the autopsy will show. There was no glass in the forehead. Am I right on that or am I wrong on that? The glass in the forehead.
They did not find any glass in the forehead.
Okay, so his shoes are still on. And the dude's like laying in the middle of the road, which you can get hit by a car and land in the middle of the road. But if you're getting clipped by a car, in order to not have glass in your head, then you're definitely going off to the side of the road because if you're going over it, you're going through that windshield most likely.
Yeah, and his mother said he would never he was kind of a skittish guy. Like she said that he would never be walking on the road in the middle of the night as it is.
Yeah, and I mean, where's he walking to without a wallet? And he took his gas cap off. I mean, the gas cap being off, I mean, people do weird things in the middle of the night when they run out of gas. Maybe, I guess maybe if you're, but I don't know that taking undoing your gas cap does anything for you.
No.
Unless you have a gas can, which in this case, I'm guessing he doesn't.
No, there was no sign there was no mention of a gas can at all in his car or on his body.
And he's 3 miles away without his wallet. Is he walking to a friend's house because he's just like, fuck this life? Does he make any phone calls on that cell phone?
No. So they wind up not being able to unlock the cell phone. His mother is actually a second fingerprint opener on it.
Right.
And when they went to have her, when they got a warrant for the cell phone or were able to seize it, they took it to mother to open. And at that point she could not. And we'll talk about the fact that he had some interesting behaviors in the couple of weeks leading to his death. He was being a little quieter. And so they don't know if he maybe took mom's option to be able to enable the fingerprint pass off of it.
The plot thickens. I will tell you though, I woke up this morning, came out, and my gas cap was off of my truck, and that pissed me off.
Somebody siphoned it?
Yep, I think they did. I don't remember my gas gauge being near empty, but as soon as I got out of the neighborhood, my gas light came on. But I noticed first thing this morning that my gas cap was off. I don't know though, because I live in the really far middle of nowhere, so someone have to go really out of their way to come siphon up my gas. So.
No, you don't live as in the middle of nowhere as you are describing. You have enough neighbors. You have enough people passing through. I don't know. You ought to rig it up though. Well,
I gotta go check the deer cam. I haven't pulled it down yet. I haven't logged on the computer to see what the old deer cam shows.
If it shows a person, definitely. We'll put that on last call. Rig it up.
We'll do a last call.
Get shocked or something fun.
We'll do a last call where you break it all down.
Yes.
At approximately 2:30 in the morning.
The siphoning of Tansy. That sounded terrible. Okay.
Yeah. Only Ashley siphons. I was siphoned by Ashley last night.
All righty. So moving right along.
She's
Up,
in the
Ashley.
chat too.
I see her.
For those of you just tuning in, Ashley is my wife, my beautiful wife. So doesn't mean I can say things like that, but kind of an excuse.
All right. So from the beginning, we know that Highway Patrol sergeants thought that the body looked staged. They thought it looked like a gunshot. So we have someone named Sergeant Moore who's going to be coming on the scene. We talked about him. Sorry. Can you go on and show a couple pictures of Alex? Okay, well that's his.
Yeah, I can show a picture of Alex. Here we go. There's a good old boy.
No, that's Buster Murdaugh.
Oh, that's Buster. I don't know which one Alex is.
I'm sorry, not Alex. Stephen, the one who passed away.
Oh, here we go.
There's Stephen.
Poor guy.
That's Stephen in the middle. On the left is Gloria, who we're going to talk about next week. She was the housekeeper for the Murdaughs for a couple of decades, and she's the one that we learned was found dead in 2018. And on the right is Mallory Beach. She is the one.
What's his name? Stephan Smith looks a lot like Macaulay Culkin. Like
he does. We've got a few other pictures of him. Sometimes he has some long hair. So Stephen was openly gay. And we'll talk about that. That didn't seem to be a problem around town, though. He didn't seem to have any issues with friends. No one bullied him. In fact, during all these interviews, they all said that he was a really sweet guy, and that when they interviewed a lot of his classmates moving forward, that no one else knew of him having issues with anyone, that everyone kind of just really enjoyed him and all that. So we know that the sled agents got there at 8:25. Talon and Burke are their names, and they arrived.
So yeah, so I mean that's a long time. We're talking like almost 5 hours.
Well, the coroners got there at 6:25. So
right, but they found this body at like almost 4 o'clock.
Right. So the sheriff's department gets there first.
So it's 4 hours.
And at some point it's highway patrol, and some point the coroners got there. Yeah, right. So it's like highway patrol, coroners, whoever got there first, and then sled at 8:25. But my point is the coroners only had to wait 2 hours before sled got there. And I don't know if that's only 2 hours or if that really is a long time in that.
Well, my point is that a small podunk department that has no idea how to work a real homicide because they don't get a lot of practice at it. Sure. Just like us podcasting. I mean, this is like our 7th one together, and we get so much better every single week. I interrupt you a little bit less every week. Still have muting issues at the beginning of the show, but we're working through it. But my point being is you don't have a lot of practice. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to miss a lot of easy check the boxes. So maybe moving the body a little bit prematurely to open up a road. I don't know why they did it or what they did, but I doubt very seriously that they were. Now I could be wrong. I'm just telling you what I doubt. I don't think it was malicious. No. Bad practice. Sure. But at the end of the day, if you working a homicide is not as easy as you might think. There's a lot of moving parts. And if you don't have a lot of people to move those parts, it gets even worse. So, somebody's got to put up crime scene tapes. Somebody's got to be a crime scene recorder. Somebody's got to be an evidence collector. Somebody's got to be a recorder of the evidence collector. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on, times and dates of who enters the crime scene and who leaves. It's all very meticulous. Somebody's got to write all this in a report. There's going to be different reports. You got to have a crime. You have a crash scene investigator. So now who's that going to be? If you got a 6-man department, I mean, your homicide detective, your juvenile sex crime detective, and your canine are all the same dude. You know what I'm saying? So, in a small town like this, little mistakes like that. Sure.
No, I get that. All righty. So we've got the Hampton County coroner. We don't know why they moved the body. So we have the highway patrol at this point has been told that it was a homicide. They've been told that need to escort the body to the autopsy. So now it's out of their jurisdiction. It's going to be sled that's going to be going, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when we get into Dr. Erin Presnell. She was the actual pathologist, the ME on the case. She does have ultimate say. So the way it breaks down is it's a little different per jurisdiction throughout the country, But a coroner can a lot of times be someone like as a nurse, I could go be trained and become a coroner. You don't have to have a lot of advanced degrees necessarily to become a coroner. That doesn't mean that they're not good at what they do, though. And a lot of times they do really work hand in hand with the pathologist and actually try to. So it would be like your investigators, your homicide detectives, your coroners, your MEs can kind of all work together to try to fill in the clues with different perspectives. So we get to Dr. Erin Presnell. Man alive, just like I said at the beginning of the show, I could do a whole show right now on her and some crazy cases that she's done with some fairly notorious diagnoses or causes of death that she's given out that don't seem to match the picture whatsoever. And there's actually one that is in a strangely roundabout way, again, connected to the Murdaughs from many years ago. So it's bizarre. So she immediately gets the body and says, she says she doesn't think it's a homicide. She ruled it as the cause of death as blunt force trauma to the head. And then she immediately says it was a hit and run. So now SLED is there and they're like, I'm sorry, what? And the coroners are like, I'm sorry, what? And everyone's like, why would you say that? What, nothing that we sees points to that, and nothing, he has nothing, again, no broken pieces of a car, anything to show physically that he was hit by a car, nothing added up. And her response was very snarky. I think she was known to kind of be this way sometimes, but she immediately just said, because I've not found a bullet and his body was in the middle of the road.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, that was her. That was it. That was her. She shut it
I
down.
mean,
you think that's fine?
It's pretty. I mean, for a gunshot in the head, like I said before, like
I'm not saying it has to be a gunshot, right?
We all called it a gunshot, and it was written up as a gunshot, but obviously it was not, because when you get to a coroner or something like that, I mean, there's tall tale signs. I mean, there's like, it could travel around the scalp, but there's going to be a pathway. I mean, it's not like the bullet just hits the head and then just exits out and then disappears forever. I mean, if somebody shoots him in the head, especially in the middle of the road, it can mushroom out, especially if we don't have an exit wound. The bullet's got to be somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and say it was probably not a gunshot wound to the head. Now,
I don't think it was either.
A hammer. Could be a hammer to the noodle.
It could have been a baseball bat.
We'll
talk about it. My point is, she ruled it. I'm not saying that it has to be. I'm not saying that it has to be a gunshot, but it also doesn't have to be a hit and run. And she shut it down immediately because she literally just couldn't find a bullet and he was found in the middle of the road. And so she's deeming it hit and run. So do we have some pictures of where his body, I think with like how his body was found?
Yeah, just like this. So, which is not too far off from what would happen in a hit and run. But again, if he went over the car, he's not going to have shoes, or he's not going to have a limb, because every time I've seen a body like go completely over a car where they like smoked him going really fast, which was on the interstate. The one that I'm thinking of in particular was a car that broke down in the middle lane on the interstate on the middle of a turn at like 9 p.m. And another guy left his children and wife in the car and went out and tried to push the car off of the road and gets whacked by another car. Now, his arm was like 10 yards away from his body and his other leg was ripped off. So when you get hit at a high rate of speed, in my experience, you're definitely not going to have your shoes on. And if you get hit that hard, you're probably going to be missing an appendage. In this case, you're not just having a gash in your head. You're going to be, like I said, the muscles and everything's going to be torn away from whatever, if it's just held on by skin or whatnot. But more likely than not, he's going to have gone through a windshield, and there were going to be glass fragments all up in this motherfucker. And we're going to have like asphalt burns or asphalt drag marks or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a crash scene investigator, but I have been on scene for many of fatalities. So, you're going to have these like kind of, burns from bouncing off of the pavement.
Right.
So I don't think you're just walking away. look, if you hit somebody going 15 miles an hour, they're going to go up onto the hood of their car and their head's going to smack the windshield. If you hit them at 35 miles an hour, they're going to go through your windshield. If you hit them at 45 miles an hour, they're going to go through their windshield and the top of your car is going to cave in, and you're going to have like your hood damage is going to be awful, and your bumper might even come off.
Right.
If you hit somebody at 60 miles an hour, their legs and shit are coming off and they're going over the car.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
So
And
I
that's what I'm
definitely
saying.
don't see hit and run here.
I don't either. I mean, it's hard. I hate to just shut it down real
Could
fast.
be
but
wrong though. Could be wrong.
Could be wrong, but I'm telling you, when outside of that gaping wound, the gash, the fractured skull that he had on the one side, am I good? Can you see me?
Yeah.
So we're all good. Outside of that, the only thing we have is a partially dislocated shoulder and potential. Like I said, it was you could call it. I've seen it in the hospital. I've seen it. It's not pretty. It's not a couple of scabs. It's big and it's yucky. So what they said was he definitely had what they would consider defensive wounds on his hands, and on his arms he had minimal, potentially defensive scratches or road rash.
There's a good point from Lynn in the chat. She says that maybe somebody threw him out of a car.
Yep.
Like picks him up, throws him out of the car.
I think that's very that could be. We're going to talk about all the theories at the end here. And
that's a good theory. Like guy picks him up, knows he's gay, gives him a ride, tells him he's got an option. Homeboy's like, I'm gay, but I'm not doing that. And the guy's like, all right, get out of my car. And he's like, no. And then door open and
no, sweetie, this is somebody he knew. So you just wait.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Like, no doubt about it. There can't be any doubt about this. So let's talk about what we did find a little bit though. So we just know already we've got some disagreement with the ME. I do not think the coroners were malicious. I do not think they were part of a cover-up. The ME, I'm not sure if it was a cover-up or arrogance, but she was very dismissive. And like I was trying to say in a working relationship earlier, that's not generally the case with a coroner, with your investigators, with SLED, let's say. I just don't find that is a professional opinion that I'm going to value and respect. If the reason you tell me that without a doubt you're ruling this a hit and run, we are getting rid of advanced law enforcement, getting rid of any homicide detectives, and we're going to call this done, and it's because he was found in the middle of the road and you didn't find a bullet, I'm sorry, sweetheart, that is not conclusive. Like, that is not where we end this.
Yeah,
Right?
I disagree with you there. I think that these folks are like super, super busy and they're just writing off stuff. And like in her mind, 2015, they're like, look, we're not going down this crazy conspiracy, detective, true crime, these basic white dudes and basic white chicks are going to, second guess my opinion. No, the motherfucker got hit by a car. Nobody's staging somebody ran out of gas. Nobody's walking 3 miles down the road. You know what I mean? Like, there's no bullet. We're not going to go down these like strange rabbit holes. He didn't get shot. If you've got some other evidence, give it to me. If not, get it off my desk. You know what I'm saying?
Like, I think that, but like you said, there's not a lot of crime there. She can't be that busy. Right. I mean, I know that she's going to do things other than crime, but
yeah, she's going to do other things that are probably not
anything
crime,
that's not natural causes.
Hospital related.
Anything that's not natural causes is when you do an autopsy, right? So that's it.
Sure.
But in a small town,
and I'm
like
sure that's not her only job in life is just doing autopsy. She's probably
she's a pathologist, so she might be somewhere or something like that. As a pathologist, and a doctor of medicine. But I'm telling you, I mean, and I get it. Maybe it's like the medical side of me, but it really kind of bugs me because I used to watch, and I hate to be like I used to watch these shows, but even watching I used to watch a lot of medical examiner stuff. There's something I wanted to do, and I just watched their relationship with the other people that work alongside them, and I watched them very meticulously rule in or rule out based on the evidence they have.
Yeah, but I've watched them argue in court, like when you do like when the family gets their own autopsy done, they're always going to take the side of the family that hired them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've watched these people fight in court before. So it's like, it's not that I don't have very little faith in them, but like at the end of the day, all these people are just guessing. Like, it's not like the TV shows. Like, I mean,
well, let me just say this, and maybe this put a bad taste in my mouth for Erin Presnell. Presnell, MD over here.
Yeah, wait, hang on one second.
Don't-
Just let me adjust the chat really fast. Lynn says that Murdaugh tried to stage his own murder. I know, but he also sucked at staging his own murder.
He really sucked,
Like-
and so did his hitman.
Like he's not like was he super smart through like, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't think he just like started off really, really smart and then got really, really dumb towards the end. I don't think that guy's smart enough to pull something like that off. That's just me. Now maybe I'm wrong. I don't even know the rest of the story here. I'm just saying, as it looks on the paper, I'm just being like, what a cop. I'm trying to give you a cop's perspective, and a cop's perspective is we have a road, we have what looks like a hit and run, could possibly be a murder, but it doesn't really make sense. But it's also hot as shit. We also need to get this body off the road. We also don't know if the state troopers are coming or they're not, or what this other team is coming and what they want us to do. But right now, somebody make a command decision. Are we just leaving this kid and we're just going to back traffic up all day for the next 4 hours? Or are we going to move this body? Let's move it. Now we got a corner that's just like, look, there's no bullet. He was found in the middle of the road. Like, we don't have any other evidence. You don't have anything that points this to a murder. So I'm not just going to be like, it's a murder. I'm not going to say that. I don't have any evidence that it's a murder, but I don't have any evidence that it's a hit and run either. Figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we go with that theory, and then I want to start getting this full circle on Stephan, because there's a few more things to cover before it gets too late. But I will say this again: this may have put a bad taste in my mouth for her, and I stand by it. I'm digging in.
Okay.
But another case was a man that had he had a 6-inch. It's been called a suicide. It is unrelated to this case, guys, but it's a finding that this medical examiner solidified. He had a 6-inch gash on his the left side of his neck, a 6-inch gash on the right side of his neck. He had an irregular cut on the right calf, and then he had a very long gash running up the right inner thigh that severed not only the skin but through the femoral artery. And she ruled it suicide. Oh, she also there was also one going up the inside of the arm.
That's defensive. Like, that's him trying to kick somebody away, and they're just like,
I don't think it's defensive. I think somebody killed him or something. You might get
That's what I'm
couple of
saying.
those out. Like, when I worked in the psych hospital, there was a real fun guy to hang out with when they took their smoke breaks, and I'd have to like them, so to speak. But he was actually found. He lived with his sister. One morning, he came to her asking for a cigarette, and when she turned around, he had a butcher knife just under his navel, under his belly button. But it gets better because it started like at the nipple line and went straight down. So I'm not saying that cannot do these things to themselves, but the fact that she ruled that a suicide, you can't have all the things that man had medically and keep going.
right.
You're bleeding out before that. So I already kind of had a bad taste in my mouth for this chick. But anyway, so moving, Dr. She is the one that was the pathologist on this case, and quickly Ernie Washington and Kelly Green, the coroner and deputy coroner, had to kind of kowtow and, take a knee here because they can't really argue her. She takes precedence over them. All right. So what we do have on Stephan, what does our evidence find? Not a whole lot. Nothing too specific or helpful here. They did find trace evidence of some blue material. It was found on his body. We found 0 automobile paint on his shirt, 0 automobile paint on his shorts, and 0 automobile paint on his shoes that were still on his feet. The paint that was found, this blue metallic paint, is something that it was used briefly on some Toyota vehicles from, I believe, 1981 to 1987. I could not find we'll talk why Buster could be involved here, the oldest brother of Paul, the oldest son of Alex Murdaugh. I have tried to call the Register of Deeds in Hampton County. I have scoured Buster's Facebook. I sent him a friend request. I cannot find for the life of me that he ever had a blue vehicle. And it's very unlikely they think that this was automotive paint. This is the same type of paint that also could be used on lines, on certain equipment or tools. And like, think your blue dumpsters, it's also that same kind of paint. So our bodies can pick up this trace evidence pretty easily. They didn't used to count this as evidence in court. We didn't have the technology, and we do now. So if it's a situation, let's say he was roughed up by a dumpster and thrown in, not saying that's what happened. Not at all.
No.
No, not at all. Not saying he was hit with a crowbar that might be covered in this blue paint. Not at all.
Like, what is the Lowe's brand? Cobalt? It's like
Right.
Lowe's blue.
And so now I want to do Mike's donut, like the Home Depot.
Dun, dun, dun,
Dun,
dun,
dun,
dun,
dun,
dun.
dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun.
Mhm.
But anyway, so here we have that. That's really the only evidence we have on poor Stephen, except for just the wounds that he has. So moving forward, there were some rumors we've talked about. So we'll talk about how the local use. You guys, there's a lot of mills. In one way, it's a small town, so there's going to be a lot of rumors. But on the other side of your tongue, it's a small town, and people know some things. I can promise you that. I grew up in one of them. So you've got to take everything with a grain of salt, but also know that a lot of things probably are rooted in some truth. With this, we know that there were rumors that Buster and didn't talk about him a lot. You want to put his picture back up? I think it was a black and white pic of old Buster. He looks actually just like his dad. I think Paul, boating incident guy, looks more like Mama.
Yeah, I think once you name your kid Buster, I mean,
I think it can go either way.
Strong
like if he's
name,
a
man.
cool dude, no, if he's a cool dude, I kind of like it. But
Buster sounds like the bad guy in Little Rascals, like a Little Rascals film.
Well,
Like, oh no, there's Buster.
Buster.
Buster's gonna get me walking home from school.
Cool, hide.
Oh my god, I ran out of gas. I hope Buster doesn't drive by with his dumb redneck buddies.
Yes.
Hey man,
Lynn,
there's that gay. Get him.
Lynn, real quick. Yes, there is a theory that Buster and his friends were coming home from a baseball game that night. You're exactly right. They have mentioned that.
Buster and the Bandits.
So Buster, can I fan myself? Can I do that on?
Dude, it's
Most
hot as
people aren't
shit,
watching, right? They're just like listening. So hot.
These lights get hot.
So anyway, there have been some rumors. Take it for what you will, that there was some involvement sexually between Buster and Stephen.
Wait,
you know,
what?
if you want, yeah,
What?
yeah.
Say it again.
So there is some rumors that Buster and Stephen at some point had. I wouldn't even say a relationship, but had some dealings, some sort of relationship.
Okay. So like,
well, because
I mean, like, what kind of relationship? Like a friendship or like?
No, Stephen was openly gay. So there are rumors
Right.
that he and Buster had at some point been romantically involved.
Oh,
I'm saying I
that
don't want to
kinda
say relationship because I don't think that Buster would have ever been open and out in a relationship.
Buster wasn't busting.
Well, he might have been busting, but just not on like openly. So correct.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
okay. So, that's one theory, and then that theory would go that people found out, and Buster's not standing for people knowing about it. So that's one thought process down here. So we know about that. We know that there was a man named Joe. That was a bit of an older man who was divorced. And we only know about Joe because Stephen's mother, Sandy, she's been very present in this case, much different than the Dylan Rounds case. In terms of like Sandy's just been on the backside worrying and crying and praying about her son and trying to help where she can, and just like trying not to be in the way, but trying to help. And so she actually found a pass to a gated community out about this man named Joe. Joe, like I said, was divorced recently and a bit older. He said that he never exchanged money, that he did meet Stephen online. They never exchanged money. He said he wasn't into anything like that. They did have a fling one time. They had one affair. He said he hadn't seen him since then. And he, in fact,
How old was Stephen?
Stephen was 19. And I don't know how old Joe was. I just know older. Like the man had been divorced at this point. He was an older man. He did say that they had had sex once.
Wow.
He wasn't into anything in terms of like exchanging money. And he just said kind of like, yeah, we did. It was just once and it was done. And he was like, and so he, in fact, didn't even know that Stephen had died until he was told by Stephen's mother, Sandy, who found him with this past she found that got into his community. I will say that I think at this point we're back to SLED not having the case. At this point, guys, the case has been turned back over to the Highway Patrol because now once the pathologist ruled it a hit and run, it's no longer criminal. So SLED is out of the picture. So we're back into the Highway Patrol having a hold of this case. So Highway Patrol, we never see any documentation that they ever asked Joe an alibi of that day or what he had been doing around the time that Stephen died.
You got to remember too that, like, again, it's the state troopers, right? So they have the whole state. And if a coroner has deemed it not criminal, these dudes aren't going to keep like just going out on a whim. And you know what I mean? It kind of goes through people's hands like really quick. They don't dwell on this like we do. Like we've dwelled on this more than that state trooper on scene does, because that state trooper is like, all right, not my responsibility. It's Sled's. Sled sends it to the coroner or the ME. The ME comes back, says, sorry, can't rule this a homicide. Looks like you're just gonna have to go off of what you said before, which was a hit and run, unless you got some kind of other evidence. And they're like, well, we don't have anything. Again, saying the same thing I said before, not malicious intent. Just that's how it works at a police department. It's like they don't drop everything for some kind of grandiose CSI salacious. And that's the other thing with true crime, is that we all kind of want it to be salacious. Like we all kind of want this to be the Murdaughs that murdered it. And when you're looking at crimes objectively, you can't go at it with any one angle of what you think the outcome is. You have to follow the evidence to the outcome. So
that makes sense. But I will say, so to that point, you're exactly right. And it has been turned over. SLED has recused themselves. It has been deemed a hit and run and not a criminal investigation. However, because Highway Patrol did initially think that it was immediately homicide, they have taken it upon themselves to start interviews. So they actually at this point this happened in July. We have a date up from September. We have a lot of interviews that we're about to talk about, into October, a little activity in November, and then it kind of goes cold. But they did spend a few months interviewing a lot of people, even after it was deemed not criminal activity. Okay. So that was Joe. In terms of following up with Buster, we know that one phone call was made and one email was left, and that is all. The reason that's significant is because once they do start all these interview processes, Buster's name comes up over 40 times as they interview people.
So everybody's just like, yeah, Buster's hooking up with that dude.
Yeah, and they're not even saying it like that. So even the people who don't say that they have a sexual relationship are implicating Buster in the crime. And they will even go so far as to say, and it surprises me, they all know that Paul was a piece, like the boating incident. Paul, he was the tough little, like, Napoleon complex, entitled rich boy brat. And they all knew him as such, even in high school. Buster, they said, was really not like that. That wasn't the demeanor he gave off. They all said he was a really friendly guy. They really kind of liked Buster. There has been evidence that Buster had been so Crockett Cassidy says, so we need Jim Terry on this case, and my answer is we do not. I can't do that again, y'all. Our sponsorship would have to be so high for me to be able to have that to happen again to us. It's the only way I could concede is if we at this point have like 6 sponsors.
Could you imagine the drama that he would bring to a case like this? If you haven't gone back and watched the PI episode, this guy, he would have taken this.
That's making me like,
oh my gosh, he would have gone all in. He'd been getting all in.
God bless.
I'd be like, Buster was out there getting his dick sucked, driving down the road, and he just said, you know what, I ain't busting on this dude, and he kicked him out of the fucking car.
And he'd be like, and I noticed
him out of the fucking car.
When I was a kicker in arena football, you may not know this about me, but all right, I can't.
All right, back.
All right. So in terms of following up with Buster, that's all. So I think that is important if they're going to conduct these interviews and want to kind of follow up with this stuff, and they have heard Buster Murdaugh's name over 40 times in these interviews. One phone call and one email, my friend. Like, I don't know. So there has been a theory about some boys driving around, sticking something out of the window, kind of messing with Stephen, and potentially like accidentally harming him to completion there. But real quick, twice we have a chain of custody broken. A biggie is with the clothes. What?
Chain of custody doesn't make every lawyer everywhere. They always say it's a chain of custody.
Well, let me ask you that, because when we thought it was a homicide, still looked at as such, his clothes were bagged and then sent with him to have his autopsy, but not handled, right? Like not marked, not labeled, no babysitter of the clothes.
Yeah.
maybe that's not a big deal. It's something I read everywhere, but maybe it's not that big of a deal. But I would think if
So
we're thinking homicide,
every cop is like every other citizen at every other job where we like to do this. And this is, I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but every single human being at every single job does this. You go to Lowe's and ask somebody for something. 1 in 10 times, they're going to pawn you off on somebody else. They're not going to walk you back and find you the 1/4-inch PVC pipe that you're looking for. They're going to go like this. They're going to put their finger on their nose and go, not it. And dude, cops are like notorious. They'd be like, hey, who's signing for these clothes? Not it. And when like 3 cops are like bouncing, like they do like the whole wait until you turn around and then they just like skedaddle. And then you turn around, you're like, oh shit, there's no cops in here. So there's nobody to sign for this. Well, I'll just tape this bag to this dude's arm and we'll just send it on down the hallway. I mean, that's
fair.
Let's
All right.
be real. That's kind of what happens. Listen, I've been at the hospital a million times, had somebody's evidence in my hand where they've handed it to me because they went down the hallway and I knew they were fucking doing it. I knew they were doing it. I knew they were going to go right out that door and they were never going to come back. They're like, hang on, hold this really quick. I'm going to go out to my car. I need to grab a new pen. I'm like, oh, I got a pen. They're like, no, I need to get my own pen. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking stuck with this.
Like I need to drive home and get my pen.
Yeah, I'm going to go home.
Probably get tired. And
right.
Yep. So, right on. All right. So we also know that a rape kit was done on Stephan. And we know that Proctor, who is a highway patrolman, we're going to talk about him. Actually, he was pretty solid in this case. Note that he transferred it over. We've never heard of it since. We don't know where it went, and no one spoke of the results of the rape kit. I'm not really concerned about that. I mean, we maybe should be. That's not where I'm going with this, but we really just don't know because it was never mentioned. So in September of 2015, so we're now into September, 2 months after this happened. Eric just put the address up in case you guys want to mail me some nice things.
Somebody said they wanted to mail you a fan, so I just gave you the address, which is 427 East Main Street, Clayton, North Carolina, 27520. Make sure you mark it failure to stop fan mail or just failure to stop mail, whatever. But if you don't put anything on there, I'm not opening it because this is a creative arts building and I just have a studio inside of that building. And if it doesn't have failure to stop on it, I'm not going to open it because it could be any number of these people's shit.
Right. Yeah. It's like a guitar pick or something. So Todd Proctor, he was with the South Carolina Highway Patrol. He someone that we are going to call Kevin. That's how he's named in interviews. He never wanted to show his name. And I think that rightfully so, right? Now that we know how many people have been tied to the Murdaughs and things did not go well for them, he's like, I'll give you this information, but I do not want my name released. So he's going to go by Kevin. Kevin talks all about what he's heard. Before this, keep in mind, a couple other highway patrolmen have interviewed. It's almost like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like I heard from my cousin's friend's boyfriend's, that Ferris, saved a kid with whatever his eyeballs. It's kind of like that. So it'd be like, we talked to Kelly and Kelly said that she got this from Isaac. And then Isaac was like, yeah, but I talked to so-and-so and his dad's a cop on but they talked to all these kids and they all have, they're not all connected and they all have essentially the same story. I mean, this is the talk of the town, a couple of different ways. They think it happened. They think that someone, Murdaugh and 1 or 2 other people in the car killed Stephan, like staged the thing, took him, killed him, threw him out, or that it was an accidental. They were stirring things up. They were being rough and not being cool, just being bullies and took it too far and stick something out of the truck and drove by and struck him. Not necessarily.
Well, that's an interesting point because I was jogging in Tampa, Florida, and I was wearing my Ranger panties and no shirt.
Well,
jogging in the nice hot summer Florida sun with no shirt and Ranger panties, and the sweat was dripping from my long hair down my back muscles down to, no, I'm just kidding. So somebody drove by and threw a full beer at me. It was a Natty Light and it clipped me in the shoulder and it hurt so fucking bad. But it's a good point. Somebody could be like,
I'll say, I'll go and let the cat out of the
bag. But I
guess
you would see that. You would see that.
That's my theory, is that's what.
You think they drove by and just smacked him in the head with something? Like a bat? Bing,
That,
right off the top of the head.
I do.
That would put you to sleep. And you know what? If you were going to put me to sleep, I'd want it to be on a ghost bed. Right
baby.
now, Ghost Bed is offering 20% off bedding, pillows, and accessories, 30% off all award-winning mattresses, 40 to 50% off adjustable base bundles, and 50% off memory foam toppers, 50% off Ghost Bed natural mattresses. All you got to do is go on there and use that promo code Wolfpack. We're going to have our own landing page probably by Friday. But right now we don't have our landing page because it's still getting set up. So just use that promo code Wolfpack. That gets too complicated in your checkout survey. Just say that you heard about GhostBed on Failure to Stop. GhostBed was with us for the whole entire year last year. And now that we are independent and free of a network, it is so amazing that we have GhostBed back. So if you want a new pillow, if you want those cooling sheets, if you want that cooling technology so that you can stay cool while staying hard in those South Carolina summers, go to ghostbed.com and use that promo code Wolfpack, baby. Our favorite part, and I hope this is the one thing that's going to let our fans know if Andrea is really part of this team or not. Our favorite part about Ghostbed is that it's made in the good old USA. USA.
Oh,
I'm not doing this again.
You
I'm
did
not
it.
doing this
You
again. Not
did
for a whole
it.
nother
That would
year.
not even. No one
Not-
would ever say it like that.
Not for
No one-
another year.
You don't start like with the cadence and then just leave it, like neglect the cadence immediately.
No, it's a cadence. It's a USA.
But it wasn't.
USA. We've all seen Rocky 4.
It
Obviously,
was
you and
until
Mike
it
haven't
wasn't.
seen Rocky 4, and y'all can't figure it out. Hopefully, our fans are smarter than you guys, and they can figure out how to go to ghostbed.com and use that promo code Wolfpack.
Just
All
say
right, continue
Wolfpack,
on.
y'all.
Mose. Continue
All right,
on. Mose.
So I'll start wrapping this up, but we know so Todd Proctor again, South Carolina Highway Patrol. He interviews someone that we are going to call Kevin. So Kevin goes on to say that he's heard all these things, right? All these things about what happened around town, and he believes them to be true. He says that he has a tough time coming forward with this because he was actually friendly with the Murdaugh family. He had been to some Gamecock games with them, South Carolina college ball. He said that they were friendly people. He actually enjoyed their company, and he said, I would hate to tarnish their name and do, say something so heinous about them if it's not true. And he was like, but I can't help but believe this is true rather than not. When he first heard the Murdaugh boy was involved, he immediately assumed it was Paul. Paul, if you remember, the boat captain, right?
Right.
And so he thought it was Paul just based on the fact that he already knew Paul's demeanor. He was very surprised to hear that it was Buster. Again, like I was going to touch on a minute ago, we do have evidence that Buster and some of his friends had been selling cocaine. He was starting to, I think he was pretty much a good boy growing up, more so than the rest of the family. And I do think he was not necessarily not a good, getting into some stuff at this point. So
Buster's gay. Buster's
No,
all
no,
up
no,
on
no.
cocaine.
Well, he may have. I don't know. He may or may not have had that relationship. We just don't. That one. I'm not
Still
hanging my hat on that
speculation.
one.
That's
It
an
is.
old. That's an old Terry the PI claim there.
Quit saying his name. It's like
So
making
what do
me
you think? So you think it was Buster that drove by and clanked him in the head? Do you think it was just some other dumb redneck that drove by and clanked him in the head?
I think Buster was driving. I think one of his friends clanked him. So what happens is, he continues to talk.
And so now if Buster's 19 years old, how does that kid not? I mean, dude, listen, I'm telling you, we don't catch criminals because they're smart, right? Like we catch a lot of criminals just because they're that fucking stupid. These kids can't whack somebody in the head, especially when you got a car full coming home from a baseball game, that somebody ain't saying shit to somebody. You know what I mean?
Yep. So finally, and this is the last little bit we're going to talk about because there's a lot of names. I could do a whole 3 shows on just different names that talk, but finally we have someone named Daryl Williams. Listen, we're going to recall last week's show a little bit when I tell you a little bit about this because it's crazy. So Daryl tells Sergeant Duncan that his stepson Patrick, okay, it's a lot of names, but Daryl says that his stepson Patrick Wilson told him that Sean Connolly, the one who struck and killed Stephen Smith. So the detective tries to get in touch with Patrick Wilson and Daryl Williams. Neither one will communication, but Daryl Williams did say in this, you ready for this? So he says again that his stepson told him, his stepson Patrick said that Sean Connolly was the one that struck and killed Stephen. He then later says, the reason I called you with this information, I wasn't going to say anything. The reason I called is because Randolph Murdaugh told me to pass this along. off his granddaddy. Granddaddy that
He's the
Alex
most nefarious one of them all. Like, I hate the
I think so
granddaddy.
too. And so, well, he's dead now, but
Good.
if you guys remember from last week, Randolph is the one that when the EMS got to the boat scene, Paul was huddled by himself on the phone with, and then granddaddy and daddy come to the hospital to immediately tell the kids to lie about who was driving the boat. So really funny that we have this other obscure character calling the highway patrol to say all these things and implicate a specific name in who did this, and then says, and I'm letting you know this because Randolph wanted me to call you. Separate note, Patrick Wilson, the man who called his stepson, Patrick Wilson at that time was being represented by Corey Fleming, attorney at law, already for some other charges. Corey Fleming, in just the past few months, has been indicted on 18 charges. He was Alex Murdaugh's best friend growing up. They were lawyers together. So his name is tied into everything that any of them do. Bum, bum, bum. So let me tell you this real quick again, just to set the scene for the town. Then we can talk on some theories and wrap it up. But you need to know that there's a cool website called judicialhellhole.com, and it breaks down counties in terms of it systematically applies laws and court procedures in an unfair and unbalanced manner, generally against defendants in civil lawsuits. We have 3,000 jurisdictional counties in the United States, and they rank them all in terms of them being a judicial hellhole. Hampton County, South Carolina, home of nothing, like teeny tiny nothing, was ranked number 3 out of 3,000 counties. Top 3, number being a judicial hellhole. So much so that to the point that they, like I said, have nothing there, no big box stores, no nothing. Walmart was going to put a store there. Walmart's exec lawyers, in fact, learned about Hampton County, South Carolina, and advised against it and said that they could be in fear of losing the chain if they were to have anything go wrong while they are in that county.
Them small southern towns, man.
Who is Walmart scared of, right? Like no one. But anyway, we're just gonna keep touching on that because they did always have their fingers in everything. And so many of the people that they interviewed throughout this process and a few months after Stephen died would say the same thing. They were all very hesitant to speak, but they kept the same story, always mentioned the Murdaughs, always mentioned Buster. And and some of them would say, I don't want to say the name out loud. They kind of have this power over the town. Like they're, it's funny. I heard another on Pretty Lies and Alibis, another podcast, and she said it was like Voldemort. And that's what I've said from the get-go with them. It's like he who shall not be named. They will not say the Murdaugh's name. So they really, it's just really gross. But all that to say, the only good thing in all of this is at this point, now that Captain Paul, boat driver, and his mom were shot and killed, and that's what we're going to talk about next week, guys, so buckle up. But now that happened last year, again, SLED is now involved, and they have come back around and said, you know what, we are reopening the Stephen Smith case because we have enough information now. So why wouldn't Buster Murdaugh be involved if handling this murder of his family, we now have information on the Stephen Smith case? To me, that, am I missing something? Because that makes it sound like it for sure would be the Murdaugh boy involved. Now, I think that he was very likely driving the truck, and I think that someone else struck him. That would be because Buster was known to generally drive his friends around. He usually didn't hop in the car with someone else. Usually,
it sounds like a Murdaugh theme, right? Like the Murdaughs always want to drive; they don't want to let anybody else drive. Like old Paul.
Yeah, they're going to take control of everything. You had the boat. It's my daddy's boat. And drive my boat.
Daddy's boat. So that's what you're thinking, huh? I don't have enough to think yet because, again, I wasn't prepared for the 2015
so much more
thing
to tell
to come
you.
back.
There's not enough time.
There's just not enough time, and so we're gonna pick up the Murdaugh part 3, which is going to be another nefarious death that somehow links back to the Murdaughs. So this is a family that just can't keep their hands out of the cookie jar scenes. I'm really excited about number 3. As far as the rest of this week goes, tomorrow we got Colin O'Brady. If you are a premium subscriber, you can watch that live tomorrow. It's gonna be a great episode. If not, just catch it on Thursday. You won't be able to see it, but you'll be able to hear it on all your favorite podcast platforms, please give us that rating and review. If you like us, if you love us a little bit, it's all right. Just do it for us. Friday, we've got Drew Breezy, who is a quite the up and coming influencers. He's rose really fast. Then Instagram kicked him off because he was getting really big, and then they were like next or something like that. So then he had to start over. He got like he had to start his own. He had to start all the way back from scratch again. But he's definitely ruffling some feathers in the law enforcement community, holding some people accountable. And so he's going to come on Friday for our breakdown to break down some things, hold some people accountable. He's going to give us his take on the Uvalde thing. So if you want to hear from a guy with a lot of experience and a very high crime area that's a very successful at their high crime, being Hillsborough, Florida, Tampa, Florida. It's the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. They have a massive department, a very successful department with one of the best SWAT teams, one of the best narcotics teams, because they are running drug traffickers out of the Gulf there. And so it's a big hub. So they have a lot of funding, a lot of budget. And so he has a lot of things to bring to the table. And I'm excited to have him on Friday. He's the kind of guy that retired a lieutenant. So he didn't play the politics. He didn't make it further past lieutenant.
All the way up there.
I've always respect that. I always say, if you're a major, I question you. I question everything about you, because I feel like you once you make those ranks, you've played politics and you haven't, maybe you started out good, but then obviously you chose climbing the political ladder over being a good human being. And that's why you made it that far. So Seth Dunlop's real quick says, so far, this whole story sounds like someone trying to describe the movie Tenet. 1,000 movie parts all happening at once or never, all accumulating into what the fuck. It kind of goes that way, but now that there's an indictment and a lot more news that's come out, it actually does. There is actually going to be a lot more sense made to this. It's these little nuance episodes. It's the boat coupled with this hit and run, coupled with next week's episode being the nanny or the caretaker.
Probably, we're gonna try to wrap it up next week.
And then we're gonna have some murder, like some real murders, where a son and the mom, the Murdaugh son, which was Buster, correct?
No, it was Paul, the boat captain,
and mom. Boat captain Paul and mom are gonna get schwacked, and then it's just gonna get even crazier from there. But it does wrap up. It won't be a complete WTF moment. So for everybody that was in our live chats tonight, Imperial Girl, DJ Davis, Greg, Kreger, Seth, we got that. What's that? Lindsay. She's back again. Lynn. She's back again. This is
Lynn. Lynn's kind of new here. Welcome, Lynn. I'm glad you're back.
Lynn, I always appreciate what you have to say. Follow us on the Instagram. Us throw us some DMs sometime. Obviously, you are really into true crime, and we're into people who like true crime. Lázaro Lopez always here to disrupt everybody. The Honey Badger, the old sweet Sarah Kelch, Greg Gregors, Lumber Chef, all the folks. They're always here, man. We always appreciate you, David. Thank you, Aaron, Stressman, Hydroman Blue, TJR, old L Wall. He's in here too. So lots of moving parts. Again, guys, this has been the last call. Yeah, True Crime Night Shift with Andrea Uplate and Eric Tanzi. You want to take us out, Andrea? How do you want to take this show out? I figured you need to have your own little goodbye. It's your show.
Just say goodnight, y'all. It's really not more complicated than that.
God, you are from a small town.
They've heard.
Were you a Hooters manager in a small town? Like
we're done.
A semi-successful Hooters manager. That's what P.I. Terry said you were. So, all right, guys. Hey, good night, y'all. Guns up, giddy up. See you next time.
Y'all.